Norah O'Donnell is here with us now. Great interview, Norah. So the SecDef, you asked him about that being reduced to rubble. The generals have been reduced to rubble. Donald Trump has said that. Some of the advisors that are with him have even talked about going directly into Raqqa with U.S. boots on the ground. What do you say about that?
You know, he was reluctant to answer any of the direct criticism that Donald Trump has leveled at this administration's policy toward ISIS, and that's why you hear he didn't want to get involved. I mean, remember, the military has to be apart from politics. But his point has been that the president, anytime that the generals or the Secretary of Defense have asked for something, the president has given it to them. I did say is one of the president's goals to have Mosul and Raqqa cleared by the end of this administration, and he said yes. Donald Trump has also said that his plan, he has not delivered a full plan, but he said his plan would be to bomb the expletive out of ISIS. Now, as you heard Secretary Carter say there, we're bombing them a whole awful lot. These are complex problems. They don't have simple solutions. I am sure since the U.S. military is the finest fighting force in the world, if there were a simple solution, they would have done it, because they wouldn't want to risk any additional lives of men and women who serve so bravely. I think, too, it's more than just actually clearing ISIS. They're then going to have to hold Mosul and Raqqa. And I talked to a number of foreign policy experts before I interviewed the secretary, and that was the point that they made, was that just getting them out of ISIS is only step one. You have to hold that so that they don't come back, or that another insurgent or terrorist group doesn't take those cities. And that's why it's really complex.
So even if they manage to clear Mosul, which is proving to be more challenging than they initially
it's been a multi-week campaign.
It's still sort of shifting administrations in midstream. Did he give any thoughts as to how he thought, you know, changing the administration would maybe impact the fight against ISIS?
You know, he feels confident that it would continue on a steady path. There is, of course, a civilian who's the head of the Department of Defense, and then there are generals on the Joint Chiefs of Staff and a chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So the way we set up our governing is that there are checks and balances in place, which is that there's military recommendations made through a civilian Secretary of Defense to a civilian commander-in-chief. So I think he's been someone who's been around military and national security affairs for a while, and I think feels confident about that. But first and foremost, you know, since so many of our institutions have been challenged, even the FBI, I think he really wanted to steer very clear of politics. And I think also, too, remember that this is Veterans Day. And I think part of, too, having this discussion about ISIS is that I think many people don't realize that on this Veterans Day, America is still at war. And not just at war in terms of preventing terrorism, but we have troops on the ground in Iraq. We have troops on the ground in Syria. We do. And we have almost 10,000 troops on the ground in Afghanistan. And another thing which we didn't even get into because we have limited time in these interviews is we also have rotating troops all in the Baltic states. Lithuania, Poland, Estonia, all as a bulwark in some ways against any further encroachment by Vladimir Putin. So we also talked about Russia in this interview.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that a lot of people sometimes forget, that there is a Russia that's ascendant. They are being very aggressive, and it's going to be interesting to see how this new administration deals with that.
Yeah, I had part two of this interview, too, and in it we talk about, I asked him, what do you think Russia and Vladimir Putin is up to? And he said, look, Russia is not helping us in the fight against ISIS. They're actually helping Assad.
Right.
And then Secretary Carter said, I've recommended against the president further cooperating with Russia on this point. It has been suggested by Donald Trump that he would have greater cooperation with Russia. But currently, the way the Russia is playing these war games at this point, there's a lot of open debate about that.
So he says we should not try to get closer to Putin. He thinks that the way that we've been doing it now, because Russia's playing the other side of it, is probably to stay away.
Yeah, I want to make sure that you guys play that, because I don't want to characterize his words incorrectly. But essentially, he has recommended that we be more weary, I think, certainly, of Russia. I'm not recommending to the president that we associate ourselves with or work with the Russians until they start doing the right thing. Remember, Russia has moved an aircraft carrier off of Syria.
Norah O'Donnell, fantastic interview. He doesn't give a lot of interviews. Thank you very much for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.